The schedule changes first. A royal engagement that sat on the calendar for weeks gets quietly moved. No press release, no explanation, just a different name attached to the ribbon cutting, a different face stepping out of the car. King Charles III, sovereign of the United Kingdom, was supposed to be there. He is not. And the man who takes his place is his son. Prince William, Prince of Wales, smiles for the cameras. He shakes the hands. He says the right things. And somewhere in Buckingham Palace, a decision was made that no one will publicly account for. This is how it starts. Not with a crown changing heads. Not with a dramatic announcement on the palace steps. It starts with a calendar. For 2 years now, the rhythm of the British monarchy has been shifting in ways that are easy to miss if you blink. Charles, diagnosed with an undisclosed form of cancer in February 2024, has continued to reign. He has hosted state visits. He has signed the red boxes of government paperwork that arrive every single day. But the spacing of his public appearances has become careful, measured, controlled in a way that feels less like a man's preference and more like an institution's strategy. Hi viewers, before we go any further, I want you to tell me one thing in the comments. If you were running a 1,000-year-old institution and your leader got sick, would you tell the public everything, or would you protect the image at all costs? Type your honest answer below. I read these, because that question sits at the center of everything you are about to hear. The British monarchy has always traded on stability. It is the one thing it sells better than any government, any company, any rival institution on earth. The crown does not panic. The crown does not explain. The crown endures. Queen Elizabeth II made that silence into an art form across 70 years on the throne. But Charles inherited a monarchy that can no longer afford that kind of distance. The cameras are everywhere now. The audience is global. And the public no longer judges the royal family on ceremony alone. It judges on transparency, on optics, on who is standing where, and on who is quietly disappearing from the frame. Royal commentators have spent the better part of 2 years watching that frame. And what they keep noticing is not what the palace says. It is what the palace does not say. So when that engagement was moved at the last minute, with no reason offered, the correspondents who cover this family for a living did what they always do. They started counting. Who appears? Who does not? How often? And what that pattern might mean for a monarchy standing at the edge of a transition no one is willing to name out loud. The first count would surprise them. The lists arrive every week, and someone is reading them like tea leaves. Court Circular. That is the official record of royal engagements, published daily, dry as dust, and to the trained eye, it is the most honest document the palace produces. It cannot lie. It records who did what and where and on whose behalf. And over the past 18 months, the people who read it closely have watched the numbers tilt. Prince William appears more. King Charles appears less. The shift is gradual, never dramatic in any single week, but stack the weeks together, and the slope is unmistakable. According to reporting tracked across the British press, this is exactly what you would expect from a monarch managing cancer treatment while protecting the institution's appearance of continuity. Charles scaled back. William stepped up. On its face, nothing about that is a crisis. It is a family doing what families do when one member gets sick. But the monarchy is not only a family, it is a system that runs on signals. And in that system, who stands beside the king at a state occasion is not a seating preference. It is a message about the future.
13.
Yes, sir.
You said 12:30.
Oh, God, I hate this.
Royal biographers have long pointed out that power inside the palace rarely moves through paperwork. It moves through presence, through the slow accumulation of who is trusted with what. When the heir starts hosting the visits the sovereign used to host, when the heir starts appearing in the continuity moments that anchor public confidence, the institution is telling you something before it is ready to say it. In July 2025, the palace announced that William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, had been appointed grantors of royal warrants. It sounds technical. It is not. That authority, the power to let companies stamp the royal seal on their products, had belonged only to Charles and Queen Camilla. Now it belonged to the next generation, too. A small door, opened deliberately. Then there is Camilla. Queen Camilla remains present, remains active, remains beside her husband at the major events. But the narrative momentum, the gravity of the story, has drifted away from her and toward the Waleses. And in a monarchy where perception is currency, drifting out of the story is its own kind of demotion. Commentators noticed. They always do. The question they began asking was not whether Camilla had done anything. The sharper question, the one that actually keeps royal watchers up at night, was this: what was the palace allowing the public to believe by saying nothing at all? Because silence is never neutral inside an institution this old. Silence is a choice, and the choices were stacking up. Then a senior engagement list reportedly shifted twice inside 48 hours, and the people who count for a living stopped counting and started asking who exactly was holding the pen. The historian sets down the modern headlines and reaches for the old ones, because none of this is new. That is the first thing the long view teaches you. The British monarchy has survived abdication, divorce, war, exile, and scandal that would have ended any other institution on earth. The crisis swirling around Charles, Camilla, William, and the man once known as Prince Andrew is not unprecedented. It only feels that way because we are living inside it. Pull back far enough and a pattern appears. Monarchies do not transition through announcements. They transition through the slow redistribution of presence until one day the public looks up and realizes the center of things has already moved. Consider 1936. Edward VIII, king for less than a year, chose the woman he loved over the throne and abdicated. The institution did not shatter. It absorbed the blow, handed the crown to his brother, and moved on. But it never forgot the lesson. Personal desire, indulged at the top, can threaten the whole structure. That fear has shaped palace decision-making for nearly a century. Consider the man who inherited that crisis. George VI never expected to be king. He stammered. He doubted himself. And he steadied a nation through war anyway, then handed a stable throne to his daughter. Elizabeth II took that stability and turned it into the longest reign in British history, built entirely on discipline and restraint. That is the inheritance Charles received. A monarchy defined by a woman who almost never explained herself and almost never put a foot wrong in public. The bar she set was not popularity. It was reliability. And reliability is the hardest thing to fake when the cameras never stop rolling, and the audience now includes millions of Americans who judge the crown by entirely different rules. This is why the rumored shift toward William carries such weight in commentary circles. Not because anything has been formally transferred. It has not. Charles remains king with full constitutional authority, every legal power intact. But royal biographers keep returning to the same uncomfortable idea. Charles may wear the crown. William may be the one increasingly forced to decide what the crown becomes. And Camilla, whose acceptance by the public took decades and arguably never fully arrived, becomes the pressure point where the institution's oldest anxiety lives. The fear that the monarchy's image can be lost long before its power is. Diana's shadow has never left that conversation. It cannot. Then royal correspondents noted something specific. A private meeting between Charles and William. Its purpose was not disclosed. And in a family this practiced at controlling information, what they choose to hide tells you as much as what they reveal. The photograph is the thing people remember, not the speeches, not the engagements, the image, who stood where, who was centered, who was edged toward the margin of the frame. In the monarchy, a photograph is never just a photograph. It is a statement of order, and everyone who studies this family reads it that way. And the photographs of the past few years keep circling back to the same unresolved figure, Camilla, Queen. Approach this carefully, the way the honest historian must. There is no confirmed wrongdoing here. There is no proven scandal in the criminal sense. What there is, and what there has always been, is public discourse. Decades of it. A long, unfinished national argument about a woman whose place in the royal story was contested from the very beginning. Royal biographers have debated her role for more than 30 years. From a public relations standpoint, her journey is one of the most remarkable rehabilitations in modern royal history, from the most criticized woman in Britain to a crowned queen. But rehabilitation is not the same as resolution. And the public memory of Diana, Princess of Wales, has never been fully reconciled with the reality of Camilla on the throne. That is the pressure the palace manages every single day. Not a crime, a perception. The lingering sense, fair or not, that the modern monarchy was built partly on a story many people never agreed to accept. While the palace has consistently presented Charles and Camilla as a settled, devoted partnership, and the evidence of that partnership is genuine, experts point out that settled at the top does not always mean settled in the public imagination. The two can drift apart. And when they do, the institution faces a choice it hates more than any other. Address the gap openly, or let it sit and hope time does the work. The monarchy almost always chooses silence. It is what it knows. It is what Elizabeth would have done. But William is not Elizabeth. He has said in his own words that change is on his agenda, that he embraces it, that he does not fear it. He has spoken candidly about not wanting to repeat his parents' mistakes. A man who says those things in public is a man thinking carefully about which parts of the inherited story he intends to carry forward, and which parts he does not. So William sits in the middle of it, loyal to his father, respectful of the institution, and quietly aware that the image of the monarchy he will one day lead is being shaped right now, in these years, by every photograph that gets taken and every one that gets quietly rearranged. Then, at a high-level state event, a symbolic photograph arrangement reportedly changed. A small adjustment, the kind almost no one would notice, except the people whose entire job is to notice noticed immediately. And they began to wonder whose hand had moved the pieces. William does not raise his voice. That is what makes it work. Watch him across the past 2 years and a method emerges. He does not attack. He does not issue dramatic statements. He does not humiliate his father or undercut Camilla in public. He simply shows up again and again in the moments that matter until his presence becomes the thing the public leans on without quite realizing when the leaning started. Royal commentators have a phrase for what they are watching. They call it molding the monarchy, not seizing it. Molding it slowly, the way water shapes stone, through patience rather than force. The evidence is in the work.
I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, as your liege man of life and limb.
William has taken full charge of the Duchy of Cornwall, the vast private estate that funds the heir to the throne, land and property and investments spread across England. The people who run it describe a man with what one director called a healthy impatience, the same quality his father had, a leader who genuinely cares about the outcome. He has driven his Earthshot prize onto the global stage. He has reportedly pushed the family toward a slimmer, more direct, more modern way of reaching the public, and he has done it while carrying weight that would crack most people. His wife, Catherine, Princess of Wales, announced her own cancer diagnosis in March 2024, just a month after Charles. She underwent months of preventive chemotherapy. She reached remission. Through all of it, the Waleses stayed visible, stayed steady, and emerged as the most popular figures in the entire institution. That popularity is not a vanity number. In a monarchy that survives on public consent, popularity is power in its rawest form. And the polls keep saying the same thing. The future of the crown, in the public's mind, already has a face. It is William's, it is Catherine's beside him. Here is the part the honest historian must underline, because it matters. None of this is a formal transfer of authority. Charles is king. William is heir. The Constitution has not moved an inch. What has moved is something harder to measure, and in some ways, more important. Responsibility. The quiet, gradual absorption of the load. That is the truth the institution will never put in a press release. Power inside the monarchy shifts before anyone admits it has shifted. It shifts in calendars and photographs and court circular entries. It shifts in who hosts the visit and who grants the warrant and who the public pictures when they imagine the crown 10 years from now. And then, according to reporting that rippled through royal circles, a senior constitutional advisor was present at a private meeting involving William. Not Charles alone. William. A man whose job is to advise on the machinery of the crown itself, sitting down with the heir. What was discussed in that room, no one outside it knows. But the historian, watching the pattern of 2 long years finally tighten into a single thread, leans forward. Because some meetings are routine, and some meetings are the moment the future quietly walks through the door. The title is gone. That is where this one begins. No more His Royal Highness, no more Prince, no more Duke of York, in the working sense the public once knew. The man the world watched for decades as the Queen's favorite son is now, in official terms, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, stripped down, set apart. A cautionary figure standing at the far edge of the family photograph, if he appears in it at all. How a monarchy handles its liabilities tells you everything about what it fears. And Andrew is the liability the institution has never been able to fully bury. His withdrawal from public royal duties came after years of reputational damage tied to his association with Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier. Andrew has always denied wrongdoing, but denial, in the court of public opinion, is not the same as resolution. And the palace learned a brutal lesson watching him fall. A scandal you cannot resolve does not fade. It calcifies. It becomes a permanent weight the institution drags behind it for years. Royal biographers point to Andrew as the clearest modern proof of a rule the monarchy would rather not say out loud. The crown can survive almost anything except the slow drip of unanswered questions. War, it endured. Abdication, it absorbed. But a member who becomes a standing embarrassment, who cannot be explained away and cannot be fully removed, that is the kind of wound that shapes how the whole family behaves for a generation. And that is exactly why the institution has become so careful about perception, so protective of the frame, so unwilling to let any new question sit unanswered long enough to harden. Royal author Russell Myers has suggested that Andrew's legal troubles actually accelerated William's plans for a leaner, more disciplined monarchy. Read that carefully. The cautionary figure at the edge of the photograph is not just a problem to be managed. He is a lesson being studied by William in real time as he decides what kind of crown he intends to lead, because the future king has watched what an unresolved scandal does. He has seen it cost the family trust it cannot easily rebuild. And the question forming in commentary circles was no longer about Andrew at all. It was about whether William had quietly decided the monarchy could never afford another one, and what, exactly, he was prepared to do to make sure of it. There is a law for this. People forget that. The machinery of the British crown is not held together by tradition alone. It runs on statute, on precise legal architecture, written down and binding. And buried inside that architecture is the mechanism that governs exactly what happens when a monarch cannot perform every duty himself. It is called the Regency Act, and it matters enormously to this story. Under the framework established by the Regency Acts of 1937 through 1953, the sovereign can appoint counselors of state, senior members of the royal family empowered to carry out certain official functions on the monarch's behalf when he is ill or abroad. They can attend Privy Council meetings, they can sign routine documents. What they cannot do is fundamental. They cannot dissolve Parliament except on the King's instruction, cannot create peers, cannot touch the core sovereign powers. The law draws the line deliberately, and the line is bright. This is the part the honest historian must emphasize, because it is where rumor and reality separate. Charles remains king, fully, constitutionally. Every legal power of the sovereign rests with him and only him. No statute has moved. No authority has been handed away. The machinery is exactly where it has always been. But here is the gap the institution lives inside. The law governs power. It says nothing about perception. And perception is where monarchies actually rise and fall, because while the Constitution holds firm, the visible work of the crown can be redistributed quietly, legally, completely, without a single statute changing.
Try to find ways, meeting the particular needs and challenges that people face, and really aim to try and bring out people's best talents and potential. Because I think a lot of people, the talent is buried and has never been brought out.
Who hosts the state visit? Who grants the warrant? Who runs the vast estates? Who the public sees carrying the institution forward day after day? None of that requires a regency. All of it can shift through nothing more than workload and presence. And it has been shifting. The state visits William increasingly fronts. The Duchy of Cornwall he now commands. The warrants he and Catherine can now grant. Each piece is legal, ordinary, explainable on its own. But stack them together and a structure appears that the law never describes and the palace never announces. An air absorbing the operational reality of the crown, while the king retains every ounce of its formal authority. From a public relations standpoint, this arrangement is almost perfect. It protects Charles's dignity, it steadies the institution, and it lets the future arrive without anyone ever having to say the word. Then came a state visit protocol that reportedly placed William in a decision-facing role usually reserved for the monarch himself. Not ceremonial, not symbolic, operational, and the people who understand the machinery understood instantly what it might mean. The correspondent says it quietly, almost to himself. The center of gravity feels different inside the palace. That sentence, reportedly passed among royal observers, is the moment everything turns. Because it is not a claim about law. It is not a claim about a document signed or a power transferred. It is something stranger and harder to fight. It is a feeling. And in the monarchy, a feeling that takes hold of the public is more dangerous than any statute. Here is the truth that defines this entire story. Institutions lose control of perception long before they lose control of authority. The power can sit exactly where it always sat, every legal thread intact, while the public's sense of where the real weight lies drifts somewhere else entirely. And once that drift begins, the institution cannot simply order it to stop. Charles is king. Say it again, because it remains true. Nothing has been taken from him. But Charles, William, and Camilla are no longer only three people. In the public imagination, they have become roles, symbols, fixed points in a story the audience is writing, whether the palace likes it or not. And in that story, the momentum has a direction. Watch the emotional triggers that drive it. Public trust, which polls keep handing to William and Catherine. Media framing, which keeps casting the Waleses as the future and Charles as the bridge to it. Symbolic visibility, which keeps placing the heir in the moments that used to belong only to the sovereign. None of these are constitutional facts. All of them are real, and together they do something the law cannot prevent. They make perception behave like reality. They make the public feel a transition that has not legally occurred. This is the precise danger the monarchy has feared since 1936. Not a coup, not a crisis you can point to. The quiet erosion of the sense that the king is the center, replaced gradually by the sense that the center has moved to the man waiting beside him. The palace cannot address it directly without confirming it. It cannot deny it without drawing more attention to it. So it does what this institution has always done when cornered by perception. It says nothing and hopes the silence holds. But silence, as this story keeps proving, is never neutral. And a senior royal correspondent had already named the thing out loud. The center of gravity feels different. Once a sentence like that escapes into the public conversation, it does not return to the box. Then, the observers notice something at a major engagement, a symbolic absence, a space where the king was expected and was not. And the quiet questions stopped being quiet. The story rewrites itself in a single week of coverage, and almost no one can point to the day it happened. That is how this kind of shift always works. There is no headline that says the moment arrived. There is only the slow realization, spreading across the people who watch this family for a living, that the way they describe the monarchy has changed. The words are different now. The emphasis has moved. William sits at the front of nearly every sentence about the institution's future. Charles, still active, still king, increasingly appears as the figure who carried it to this point rather than the one carrying it forward. Camilla, meanwhile, occupies the most uncertain ground of all. Royal biographers have debated her place for over 30 years, and that debate has never fully closed. In the commentary of this moment, she becomes the symbol of an unfinished question, the part of the modern monarchy the public was asked to accept but never entirely settled. Not an accusation, a tension, the lingering sense that some chapters of this family story were written faster than the public was ready to read them. Keep this grounded, the way the honest historian must. This is a shift in narrative, not a change in the Constitution. No power has moved. The red boxes still arrive for Charles. The signature that matters is still his. What has changed is the story the public tells itself about where this family is heading, and stories, once they turn, are nearly impossible to turn back. Here is the emotional truth underneath all of it. Royal transitions are never declared at a single moment. They are recognized slowly, in hindsight, after the fact, when everyone looks back and realizes the ground had already moved while they were still watching the old map. The monarchy does not announce its future, it reveals it, one quiet rearrangement at a time, until the future is simply the present, and no one can say precisely when the change occurred. That is the pattern the long view always shows. The crown shifts before it admits it has shifted. It moved that way in 1936. It moved that way in 1952. And the people who study it closely believe it is moving that way again now, in calendars and photographs and the careful spacing of a sick king's appearances. Before we reach the final chapter, do this for me. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story on this channel goes even deeper into the hidden machinery of the crown, and you will not want to miss it. And drop a comment telling me what you think is really happening inside that palace. Your take might be the one that makes someone else see this whole story differently. Then came a symbolic royal absence at a major engagement, a space where the sovereign should have stood, left open. And among the observers who never stop watching, the same question rose at once, sharper than ever. If the king is not at the center anymore, then who is? The historian closes the file, sets down the pen, and does not reach for a verdict. Because the honest ones never do. Step back now, all the way back to the place where commentary ends and history begins. Strip away the cliffhangers and the rearranged photographs and the counting of engagements. What remains is not a scandal. It is something quieter and far more lasting. It is the slow, careful turning of an institution that has survived nearly everything by learning, again and again, how to move without admitting it is moving. Consider what each figure in this story truly represents, not as gossip, but as history. King Charles III represents continuity under pressure no previous monarch faced in quite this form. He waited longer for the throne than any heir in British history, and he arrived to find a public with far less patience than the one his mother commanded. He has reigned through cancer, through family fracture, through a media age that judges the crown by transparency rather than mystery, and he has held it together, signing the boxes, hosting the visits, enduring the way the institution always taught him to endure. Queen Camilla represents the hardest thing a modern monarchy must do, which is ask the public to accept a story it did not choose. Her decades-long journey from the most criticized woman in Britain to a crowned queen is one of the most remarkable acts of survival in royal memory. And the fact that the debate around her never fully closed is not her failure. It is the proof of how unforgiving public memory can be, and how long the shadow of Diana, Princess of Wales, still stretches across this family, and Prince William represents the one force no institution can resist forever, which is generational inevitability, not through rebellion, not through any grab for power, through patience, presence, and the steady absorption of responsibility while his father remained king in every legal sense that counts. He has said change is on his agenda, change for good, that he embraces it and does not fear it. A man who says that, and then quietly does the work to back it, is not waiting for the future. He is building it in plain sight. Here is where the honest historian must plant the flag clearly, so no one mistakes the story for something it is not. No formal power has been transferred. Charles is king. William is heir. The Constitution stands exactly where it stood. What this story documents is not a coup or a crisis. It is the oldest pattern in royal history, the redistribution of presence, the way the weight shifts before the title ever does. And that is the strange, beautiful truth about how monarchies actually move. They do not change when they are ready. They change when they have no other stable option left. The institution adapts not because it wants to, but because adaptation is the only thing that has ever kept it alive. It bent for Edward VIII. It bent for Elizabeth II. It is bending now, slowly, around a sick king and a steady heir and a queen, still carrying an unfinished question. What the public reads as upheaval is usually just visibility catching up with a reality that was already true. The monarchy survives not through control, but through this quiet willingness to let the future arrive before anyone is forced to announce it. And so the historian leaves it where honest history always leaves it. Not with a confirmed scandal, not with a collapse, but with a single observation that has held true for 1,000 years and will likely hold for 1,000 more. The crown does not move when it is ready. It moves when it has no other choice. And by the time the public finally sees the change, it has almost always already happened. If this story made you see the royal family a little differently, share it with someone who loves history as much as you do, and tell me in the comments which royal story you want investigated next. The next one is already coming. Make sure you are subscribed so it finds you when it does.